Welcome to the digital airways of Storyophonic. I'm Dan Kimpel. With this ongoing conversation series, we present the people, personalities, and perspectives of the modern music business through conversations with those in the spotlight and behind the scenes. It is our objective to entertain and inform you as we reveal tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. Multi-hyphenate songwriter, producer, arranger, and manager, Darrell Brown might be best known for writing platinum hits recorded by LeAnn Rimes, Keith Urban, and Faith Hill. But his credits are vast and varied, a far-flung roster from Ariana Grande to Neil Young. With songs of truth and transcendence, Darrell Brown is a creative original, and he's our guest today on Storyophonic. In studio with Darrell Brown. Hey, Darrell, how are you on this beautiful day?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Good, good. You know, we met one other time.
Was it dark? Did you need money?
It was very... on the dresser.
Just kidding.
It was dark, but we were in Hotel Cafe, and we were seated together. Brendan Okrent, who was at ASCAP at that time, and is a dear friend of ours, and she seated us together. I was very enamored of our conversation, and everything about you that night was just really, really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, man. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you during the daytime.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I introduce you as a multi-hyphenate because you do so many different things, you know. It seems sometimes that you write a song and then kind of imagine a universe around it in a way.
Wow.
You know.
I think you're right. I never used the universe word, but you're right. I think I always look at things larger than what it is. I do envision something. Sometimes when I'm writing or producing a record or something, I might pretend it's a movie instead of a record, so I can get out and discover more about what we're creating together, you know. And so, yeah, I do kind of go into my little imaginary word. I'm going to use universe for now on. Yes, I do. I do kind of think about that. You're right. Wow.
I wanted you to define something for us, if you would, and that this creative anarchy. I saw that.
Creative anarchy, right.
What is that?
Well, years and years and years ago when Pangea Records started, and that was an offshoot record. It was in the FBI building, not as in the government, but Miles Copeland's brother Ian Copeland. They had a building in New York, and one of the offshoot records labels was a label that Sting and Miles Copeland and Christine Reed, who left Sony Masterworks to come over and start. And I was there a lot, and I was going to maybe be signed there. So it was kind of this movement between the two things. But at one moment, when that label started, so they had this artist did this whole crazy ass poster for Pangea's first release, and on it said "Creative Anarchy," and it was like And I remember all the time in my life I went, God, I love those two words together. And I didn't quite know why I loved them back then, because I was definitely not a creative anarchist back then. But there was something that reminded me of that. And so as my life kind of grew on, I found myself always constantly trying to push things further or crack the code of something's going on. Or if somebody was playing a bass, the other playing guitar, it said, hey, why don't you switch instruments and let's see what happens? And they'd go, what? I said, let's get uncomfortable and see what we create. And so then little by little, as my life went on, years by years, I said, Creative Anarchy, that'd be a really good company name for me if I ever want to keep branching out myself or brand that stuff for me. So that's kind of how the thing came out. It started when I saw those two words from Sting, and then some years ago I went, my next incarnation's Creative Anarchy. So that's how that happened.
You produce records. I've encountered songwriters that tell me that they became producers as a way to protect their songs, you know?
I only became a producer for the song. I maybe they protect your songs, but they're like, so someone wouldn't neuter the songs. Yeah, maybe like from what it was. But I think the producer thing happened is when people didn't want to do my song. And I started producing some, young things that nobody ever heard, but as a way to keep having a chance for my songs to have a life somewhere. Now, if that life only went 10 albums sold, at least it was 10 albums sold instead of not. And so there was a project I did called Soul Mission that kind of became it was like this wild idea of taking Saturday night and Sunday morning and the mom and pop of music and smushing them together and not letting them separate from us. So kind of taking all the blues and all the grit and the grain of like a shanty shack, music, and then marrying it with the morning of gospel. So I had this idea one day. I was in Arizona, and I called my buddy David Bateau, who I've been writing with a lot forever and ever, and I said, come out this weekend, I have an idea. And over that next 2 weekends, we wrote their album. And then after that, I reached out to Mavis Staples and Steve Cropper and Booker T. Jones and James Gatson and Billy Preston, went to all these people from Stax and Motown and said, hey, I have this idea. I'm going to record it live in 4 days. Are you up for it? And they all came. And so when we cut the record, I only had so much money. I was like, So I only had 4 days to cut it all live. So we had like 16, 18 people in the room, the choir, the singers, Mavis, Tata, Vega, everybody. And we cut that album in about 4 or 5 days, and that was it. And then it ended up being on Epic, and they ended up getting a lot of people from Bob Dylan to Dolores O'Riordan to Van Morrison's people calling me and saying, love the album. Maybe sold 40,000 units back then. But that started my journey of an idea I had in my heart to create something that, I don't know, that's how it started. And so that's when I kept following that muse. I said, I had this idea, like you said, this whole universe I created. And that kind of started me producing, But I didn't produce everything I wrote, but I always had ideas I shared with the producer, on the arranging side or another way to keep that song four-dimensional.
Yeah, revisiting the Soul Mission project is very interesting. And you mentioned Tata Vega, who we get to hear her more recently, too, on something that you did. So
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
It was fun to bring her back. That was great. For me, back to me, working with her. So
Yes. Great to revisit that with Mavis Staples, Steve Cropper. I mean, unbelievable.
I went on this whole thing. I was signed to Geffen Music, and I was signed to Geffen Records. And I had all these little things. And then one little moment, I had like a Daryl Hall and Hall & Oates, a Diana Ross, a Bette Midler, a Bruce Hornsby. All these records were going to be coming out. Had my own record deal. And then all of a sudden, meteor hit the earth.
It's interesting when things become deflated in what you just described to us, where everything ended, but somehow that was a beginning for you.
Oh, big time! I literally had to take a sabbatical of a moment. I went out to Arizona and just kind of, that's where my family's from and where I grew up, and just to kind of go reassess. So it was so great kind of getting all that together. But what it was, when I took that sabbatical and everything blew up here. All of a sudden, at one moment, the record deal went away. All those records went away. Bangles didn't cut it. Bette Midler cut too fast. Hall & Oates didn't cut that one song. Bruce Hornsby used his brother on the lyric instead of my lyric. Everything just went away. So I ended up on a sabbatical. And when I said, I just got to stop for a moment and reassess why I'm writing and who I'm writing for. And am I being honest? And I kind of went back to this thing. This is what led to Soul Mission. I started going on a walkabout in ways where I kind of started going, why do I like writing? Who are my influences? But who influenced my influencers? So that started letting me on a craft going like, okay, I like this person, I like this person. That led me to Willie Dixon. So next thing you know, I met up with Willie. And then I got to write with Willie, and then I got to be around him. Then that led me to other pop staples and other people in that world. So I started kind of going, oh, this is why I liked it. This is the inspiration of why I want to write. And so that sparked the Soul Mission record. So it took me everything that I thought was cool, and I was going to have all these other new songs and records out and have a record deal and Geffen Records, and here I am, and it all went away. I got all stripped of that. And I really believe I needed that all to go away in order for me to even get deeper into why I write and for what reason I write. And I feel it's to not just make people feel, but to make them, I don't know, have a systemic, cognitive look, spiritual look inside themselves to say, what are they doing on this planet, and how can I let them know that they're not alone, and how to take that not being alone and how do we help others, And I don't mean that in any kind of grandiose way, as except to going, how do I look in your eye and find a piece of me in you, so I meet you in that place. And can I do that with my song? Can I do that with the record I'm creating? Can I do that in the meeting I'm having? Can I do that in the performance somebody might be seeing on stage? Can I do that in how I cut a deal with somebody to do something? How do I do that? And I think that became my journey. But everything had to be stripped away from me for that to start.
Very famously, you did that with a song with LeAnn Rimes called What I Cannot Change, which is a song which began as a song and became a movement. It became a book. It became a website. It became stories that people shared about what they had been through. Did you know that was what was happening with that song when you wrote it?
No. LeAnn, she was working on Whatever We Wanted record for UK in between things. She hadn't done the family record yet, hadn't started. And wrote a few things for that with her for the UK record. And then one day she came over to my house, and she'd had these conversations with her mom and dad, and in a succession, and she was just like, just frustrated all hell. And she started sharing things with me, and while she was sharing things with me, I'm going, that sounds like a song lyric, and I'm sitting there trying to be really attentive to her while she's pouring out her feelings and crying, and I'm taking notes, I'm going like that. And then finally, about 20 minutes into it, she goes, "Are you even listening to me?" I said, "Oh, I'm listening to you. I'm the total horror right now." And I said, "Look at this." She goes, and I said, "What if?" And the verses came out, and then we left it alone. We didn't write anything but the verses, no no chorus, no bridge. I said, "Let's wait. The rest of the song will come out later. I don't want a songwriter this song. Let's." And about 4 or 5 days later, she came over for dinner, ended up talking again, and then all of a sudden I went, "There's the chorus." I said, "What?" And then all of a sudden this chorus, and she went up in the head voice, and then the chorus happened. I said, "Okay, we need a bridge probably, but let's wait." So the next time she came over, the bridge came out. And so the song was complete. And I looked at her that night and I said, you cannot sing unless that song goes through some part of you deep in your soul. The day that you keep writing from the same place where you sing from, your life will be changed. Because you can sing the phone book and people cry. But when you sing something that you want to tell people or share about yourself, and so that's how What Cannot Change happened. So when that happened, that's when all of a sudden I was with a book publisher friend out in New York, Will Schwalbe, and he said, this could be a book. I said, no way. And that led to HarperCollins, and that led to all that kept on growing the website, and then the remix record, and it became this LGBTQ anthem as well. So it kept on, and the song was like on AC chart, the country chart, and the dance charts all at the same time, like 3 different worlds. So no, I did not expect that, but I knew the song was special. I knew that it had a spirit to it that I loved, and I knew that I loved that was going to be put out into the world by her.
The stories that people choose to share in the book, a lot of them had to do with abuse. A lot of them had to do with,
addiction or death, loss.
Death and loss. So it's very interesting reading what that did inspire. Mm-hmm. So
it was very moving too. It's like anything. I don't think you can really understand what something will do, or because you can never write. I believe, let's write this so it does that. Mm-hmm. Can't do that. You have to, it takes you out of being honest, and then you're acting. You don't want to act. You just got to be.
I've talked to a lot of songwriters about the thought that they've shared with me that sometimes it feels like a song is pre-existent.
Absolutely.
And they're channeling something. You have used a metaphor of sculpture, of a brick or a rock or something with a song inside that's in there, but now it's up to you to chip away to get it.
I think I wrote I did a lot of writing for the New York Times op-ed, and I kind of talked about that, where I said where sometimes it's like that pre-existing thing that you're just kind of brushing away the sand to try to reveal what had been left for you. And sometimes as songwriters, we're taught to just, when you get a brush away and you find the bust of the head, oh, there's the song, and you crack it off. And you go, I got a song. And I'm kind of that viewpoint of going like, well, why don't we just keep brushing away the sand? And then there's a head bust. Now it's on top of shoulders. Now it's a statue. Now the statue's on the pedestal. Now the pedestal and the statue's in front of some stairs. That's in front of a building. That's in front of a town, which is in front, how much more is there to be discovered?
Wow.
But do we just settle for just the first brushing away the sand because that fits in the 3 hours,
Yeah.
I think if I had pushed, or LeAnn and I had pushed What It Cannot Change at that time for us, it wouldn't be the song it is right now. I think it was, you have to follow your intuition and not form of what the industry wants you to do. And listen, a lot of young songwriters, people are making records now instead of writing songs. Let's go in and write a record. And you kind of go, okay, great, but my brain's going, why don't you give it a little breath room? Maybe we haven't found that lyric twist. Maybe we haven't found that melody that does it. Like You'll Think of Me, which Keith Urban cut. That song had 5 demos. And when I played it for Keith, I never played any demo for Keith when he asked about the song. I literally put out the lyric sheet, taught him the song. And I had the opportunity to do that. And he never heard the demo. If he had heard the demos, he would have passed on the song.
Really?
Not the demos were bad, but the song kept developing. The lyric came out first in a rhythm and no melody. And then we advanced the melody. And then the bridge came later when Joe Cocker wanted to cut it. And then they said he needed a middle 8, which for those listening, a middle 8 on UK here is a bridge here. So we went and wrote the bridge, and then he decided he wasn't going to cut it. But now we had a bridge that worked really cool. And then, it kept evolving. And then after the record came out with Keith, the live version happened. And then we created the Tag Out, which was new then. So this song kept on growing. It's kind of like having a 12-year-old and just wanting to stay a 12-year-old all its life and not grow into the woman or the man it's supposed to be. The song kept evolving. Isn't it the same way Leonard Cohen talked? He said, Hallelujah. He said if he was still alive, probably still be writing verses to it.
Yeah. He told me it took him, he spent 5 years writing. He said there were 65 verses at the time. And he said 5 years, and I said, but not 5 years every day. He said, a lot of days.
Yeah, you would keep on going through.
Keep going, yeah. And you never knew which verse was going to be the one. They all had a standard. So interesting.
There's a thing that sometimes I talk about in songwriting, and I think in any type of creating, that there's a series of songs that come out. I think Neil Young writes this way. I think, and there's that type of writer where, look at Neil Young, look at Adele's 21 record. Mm-hmm. It's one kaleidoscope of one event with 15 different emotions. I love you. I hate you. I hope you die. Will you remember me? I hope you come back to me. We could have been this, but wait, I'm going to find someone like you. It's one world of this invention. You look at, Harvest. You look at Neil Young. Living with War. Anything. It's like this series of songs that come out. Now, some writers like Neil will even record the album in the sequence that came out.
Wow.
He's done that. Yeah. Other people, they can say, when I'm done with what I'm saying, well, I'm done with the record. I've finished my viewpoint. I finished the movie. Those are scenes to a movie. The movie's done. And I think that is, people don't give their time for that to happen as well. But I mean, there's I think, like, listen, I'll give you another stupid analogy. So please, for those of you, I hope I'm not gross. So it's like Breaking of Water, Baby Afterbirth. All 3 different songs. You show off the baby, but you can't have the baby without the other 2.
Sure.
And I think if you have a breakup, or you're in love, or you've just discovered love, or you're trying to find who you are, whatever journey, write a series of songs until that feeling's exercised. Even that just chapter. You might write 3 movies, 75 songs, you know what I mean? A trilogy, Star Wars, but still, when that first movie's done, when that first series of songs come out, look at that and pick the babies out. Or do what Neil does, do 1 through 12, and that's what the thing is, you know? But I think you have to do that in life just the same way as it's the heartbeat of your writing career. It's a heartbeat of your artist career. You have the beat, and then you don't have the beat. And then you have the beat, and you don't have the beat. And that shows living. When you just want this all the time, the heart's not moving. You know, you've gotten to the brain, you've gotten in the way of it. I think too many people think what comes out's precious. Now, I've written hit songs, and I've written really songs I love that no one's ever heard that came out really quick. Really, really quick. But I've also written songs that I love that taken me a year.
We'll be right back. This season of Storyophonic is sponsored by Isotope, makers of innovative audio products that inspire and enable people to be creative. Visit isotope.com to learn about award-winning audio plugins and use the code STORY10 to get an extra 10% off. We are also sponsored by Odyssey. Trusted by professionals all over the world, Odyssey is uncompromised audio. Visit Odyssey.com. One of the things that you do in songwriting that is emblematic sort of the Nashville school of writing is furniture in the room. Having a concrete images of things, objects, as opposed to just feelings. Like I was thinking about, I remember being confused by You'll Think of Me by Keith Urban. Like, did he say, take your cat and leave my sweater? Or did he say, take your cap and leave my sweater? So, but the fact that was making me think about it, you know.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the Australian accents creeping in there on him. Cat, you know what I mean? He gets in the, you know, and then whatever comping the producer did, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, it's interesting when Ty and I were working on that, we kind of, on the lyric, you know, it's kind of like, I think the word dog came to somebody, you know, did a dog? And we said, no. No one would ever give up a dog. But they'll tell them to take your cat and get out of here. You know what I mean? I've always loved the rhyme, the sweater to the weather.
Yeah.
I always love, we got nothing less to weather. I just love that happened. I really love that. And I don't know, it's fun sometimes in that Nashville thing of knowing where you are, but there's another thing about going on. I don't want to know that you're in a truck anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want you to say, hey, I called you on the telephone. Well, what else did you call me on? You know what I'm saying? How many more times can in other words, I was taught or put in my brain by the fear of God taught when I was first at ASCAP, and they took 4 young songwriters, new songwriters, they say we're all different ages. They put us in this songwriting room, in this little room with one piano with Sammy Kahn, Sammy Fain, Johnny Mercer, and I can't remember who the other person was. Oh, I'm sorry. And then they were told, those guys, they can only play new songs. Something they had written recently, even if it was 4 years ago. And we had to play new songs. And they would be sweating and just as nervous as us. Instead of sitting there playing, you know, here's a hit, baby. Check that out. Try to beat that, you know. And it was so vulnerable, but songs were still so good. And I remember them time they were talking about on the lyric. He said, listen, if someone said, I'll tell you the word blue in a lyric, your eyes are blue. Okay. He said, well, we've heard that before. Now, if you really believe that's what you want to say, then with the rhythm or the melody of that, give me something new. Is it violet blue? Or is it blue, 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 blue? Or is it like a LeAnn's where she yodels? And you go, now the word or the lyric has now flipped, it's turned. So, like I Drive Your Truck, that Jesse Alexander, them did Lee Bryce song, brilliant song. They took the word truck and they gave it, the reason I drive your truck is to be close to you because you're gone. And the brother, and you go, wow, yeah. They just flipped the door. It's our responsibility to keep flipping the door. Take the influence, whatever you do, and then how can I rhythmically, chordally, harmonically, melody-wise, or description-wise, take that word that we've heard a lot and show something about it different. That's what they told me. They put the fear of Goo with him. Now, of course, they were writing Tin Pan Alley songs, and they could write the song called I Love You because no one had written it. And you kind of go, well, damn, you know. Yeah. But they found this every other day to do that. And I think when you talk about that Nashville mentality, or even in the pop and hip-hop world stuff today, all young songwriters, they're so satisfied with what first comes out. Yeah. Then you look at Olivia Rodrigo, or you look at Lance Morissette, you look at Billie Eilish, you look at songwriters that come out like that, and they communicate and they flip things in a new way, and everybody gets so excited, and you go, of course they did. Look, that's all they did. They just a little skewed different from the normal, but. Publishers, A&R people, the show you, if we don't recognize it, we don't want it. And that's a shame. I think we need to keep on pushing the envelope in all those creative forms and keep flipping the dial on it. So
that's terrific.
I constantly meet so many young people, and I just kind of go, you know, you're this close from being yourself. Right now, you sound like your influencer. You know, there's a thing I also, coming back to influence, who influenced your influencer. Yeah. If you're a writer or an artist or an engineer or a producer, find out who your influencer is and then do your homework. Like if you like Brandi Carlile, with Brandi Carlile like Joni Mitchell, with the Joni Mitchell loved Peggy Lee. Mm-hmm. Well, now go down, learn the Peggy Lee song, and now produce it like it's today. And you're going to have something as timeless as fuck.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
So true.
But if you only go back to one influence, who needs you here? You might be successful, but no one will ever remember you.
You were out here in Hollywood land and living in an apartment with a piano and I believe performing at Disneyland.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. Yes. 6 nights a week. 4 shows a night.
Rising up in Tomorrowland, if I recall.
Tomorrowland and the Disney. There's a Cokeland Terrace and then the Space Mountain Stage. 2 years, 2.5 years.
What was your aha moment of writing songs? I mean, because this is kind of where you were. You don't come from a showbiz background.
No.
I believe air freight business.
Air freight business, yeah.
So, what was your aha moment when you arrived? You know, was it influences from other people, or was it just something that clicked for you in your mind?
The good thing about doing the Disneyland thing, it paid my rent. It was great. My rent at the time was $250 a month. And I had to join the AGVA union, which is the American Guild of Variety Artists, to perform at Disneyland during that time. And we were doing 6 nights a week, 4 shows a night. For almost 2 years. I think I ended up making, before taxes, somewhere about $1,200 a week. My rent was $250.
Pretty good.
So whatever the taxes gone, half of that, whatever the point was, I got to save a lot of money. The musicianship and the singers that were playing were just badass guys. They're unbelievable. And I think it was in the second half of being down there when the Cokeland Terrace was going up and down that we were doing all these pop songs, all these R&B songs, just a variety of country songs. And it was like being in school. You know, you get used to hearing, oh, hear that bass line there. you start mimicking the bass line because you're so tired of singing the melody. You start, you know, and then you start taking to school, and then you're hearing your DD sing one song that you're not singing, and you become a witness every night to all these hit songs that were going on during the time. So at about a little bit of time, I got a little tired of driving to Disneyland, and I went like, you know what? I started writing sometime, but I stopped. I'm just going to quit. I've got enough money to live on for the next couple of years. Let me just write. And that was my moment. It was just, I think it was during Freak Out. Freak Out, whatever it was. I said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to stop. I'm going to give my notice. I'm going to start writing. And that's when I met, at the same time, that's when I met the ASCAP folks.
Yeah.
And Arthur Hamilton, who wrote Cry Me a River, and Alan Marilyn Bergman, and Loretta Munoz and Julie Locke Horton, who ended up working with Diane Warren forever. And they put me into a New York and a L.A. first pop songwriting workshops. And in the one in L.A. was with Diane Warren and myself, Alan Rich. I can kind of keep on going, Shelley Pike, and we were all starting out.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just wrote 125 bad songs, but I had to start somewhere. But that aha moment, since I could take care of my rent and I worked really hard to do it, I just spent all my time trying to write. And then my next aha moment, after 135 bad songs, trust me, Ophelia's Pond, that's the name of one. Just take that in. I wrote this song called Love on the Other Side. I don't know, it was I wanted to write that song. There's something was going on in my life. And I wrote it as best as I could. It wasn't a great song, looking back. But something changed. And I saw all my friends start going, hey, I really like that song, Love on the Other Side. Which, of course, my personality went, well, did you hate the other 135 songs? You know what I mean? Because I knew they changed. And I kept on going, what was it that they liked better about this song? And I went, oh, I was writing something that I wanted to write, that I needed to write. Not that I thought I should write. And that started me on my next steps. So the aha moment was, stop, I can pay my rent with the money I saved, write songs. They just ended up being bad songs, but they helped me, you know? And then when the next aha moment was when I stopped trying what I thought people wanted me to write, and I started writing for what I needed to write. And that's when that started for me.
The spirituality, there are other songs in your vast, and again, I mean, the numbers you just talked about, the 130 bad songs.
Oh,
I mean,
unbelievable. Oh, it's hysterical.
Just listening to your recorded repertoire, because there are playlists out there on the platform that we shall not mention by name.
We shall not mention.
We shall not, but I can listen to 5 hours of your songs.
You got to be kidding me.
I did.
Honey, I'm so sorry. Do I have to pay you for therapy?
But it was interesting when something would come up that I didn't realize you had written, because I really usually know that thing. One of the songs I wanted to ask you about was...
What are you going to say?
I'll just say the line, Hallelujah, a little revival. Radney Foster and
Randy and I wrote,
Yeah.
Randy Foster and I, we met, I moved to Nashville, and Tim Dubois told me to get my butt out to Nashville. For those of you who don't know who Tim Dubois was, a songwriter, producer, but he ended up starting Arista Records, and it became the biggest label in town. And I met Tim, and we started knowing each other, and he told me to get my butt out to Nashville, and he was going to start this label called Arista Austin, and he said, and he wanted me to be around, be a part of stuff. And in that, I met Radney. Radney had turned this record in to Arista, his third solo album. And they basically, Steve Schnurr at the time and Tim introduced me to Radney about going in, put 2 new songs and just redo, kind of fix and remix the record that he turned in. Well, I heard the record and I went, man, you're so talented, but I believe about 2 of the songs. And that came back to my same thing I just said. I said, let's take the little money they've given us and let's go through all your songs, and I only want to know about your wife, your old wife, your son, your grandfather, only things that are real. Anything that sounds just like it was written to be a hit song, we're not going to record it. And we did this record called See What You Want to See. And that's where Raining on Sunday came from, and Godspeed, and I'm In. It was a great experience, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in that, Radney and I discovered how really connected we were as writers. the grit of ourselves, the inspiration, the sex, the sensuality, and we would write a lot. And that song, A Little Revival, he was doing a record, what would end up being called Revival. And when that song came up, we just wanted to kind of look at the world, look what's going on. It said, and just hallelujah, amen to love. When Amen to Love came out, we went, badass, great follow line, because that's what I'm saying. How many times have we ever heard hallelujah, hallelujah? I've done it a couple of times in my really good songs, but how do you follow that up? And just a simple line of amen to love.
Yeah.
I was like, love solves it all, doesn't it? Yeah. But I loved writing that song. That was really fun. I love that record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that love.
And I love Sarah Evans. She kind of also, but the Radney record version is the shit.
Very edgy. It's really got an edge.
And the melody doesn't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Sarah does so good, but they changed some things, so they neutered a few things, which if I would have been in the room, I'd go, why you want to do that? For who?
Yeah.
Not for you. You're doing it for another reason, But I love Sarah, but Radney, I love that song. That's a great song. I still listen to that song. Makes me happy.
You can listen to it on a playlist of like 5.
Oh, shit. I don't think I want to do that with myself. Oh, my God. I'm like every other songwriter. I listen a lot to the last song I wrote.
A lot of, that's it. Speaking of songwriters, and we are, of course, speaking of songwriters, in studio with Darrell Brown. You did a gig, I think in December, you were on stage in New York at Cafe Carlyle for Rita Wilson.
Love her, my dear friend.
Dear friend. And she invited some songwriters to join her, among them Desmond Child.
Mr. Desmond Child.
Cara DioGuardi.
Love her.
And Darrell Brown.
Yes, I was kind of like, I remember Rita calling and said, hey, we're going to do this thing out there. And I've been to it before. I've done ones with her out here at the Geffen Theater.
Yeah.
And when she invited me, and she said, Desmond and Cara are going to be there, I said, honey, you don't need me. Why don't you just go through the second, third page of their songs? You don't need me. It's fine. But she said, no, and she was great. She said, no, I need your heart there. And I said, oh, okay, I'll be there. It was the sweetest thing. I still almost cried when she said it. But yeah, that was fun. I've known Desmond. I first met Desmond in New York. And I remember having lunch with him, and he told me he had this really unbelievable song coming out with Bon Jovi called "You Give Love a Bad Name," and I was like, "Oh my God, what a great title!" And he said, the next one's even better. It's called "Living on a Prayer," and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And of course, they were life-changing for everybody. But that's how long I've known Desmond before that came out. It was crazy. But so it was really fun being on stage with Des and Cara. I've written with Cara before. It was really fun. It was humbling, and I learned a lot about myself while being on stage with them as well. So.
It sounded interesting, yes. And Rita Wilson, I believe her husband does a few things in show business as well, correct?
No. There is a deep fake that does a lot of stuff named Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah, I got you.
But Rita, you know what's great about Rita? Her journey as a songwriter, people like, oh, it's Rita Wilson, blah, blah, blah. Her work ethic in wanting to become a better songwriter and a better songwriter and a better songwriter. I've watched this whole journey with her all these years, this decade here, and she's a real songwriter. She really, truly is. She can hold her own. She can hold her own with any of them. Any of them. I know most people might blow things up, but no, really, she found this second phase in her life that just means the world to her, and it shows in her writing, There's a song of Rita's called Throw Me a Party. And have you heard that?
No.
After she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and of course she sat down with her husband, talked about if something doesn't go right, it doesn't turn out right, if they goes, I want you to throw me a party. And she was talking to Liz Rose, and they ended up writing that song. Just think about that, why she wrote the song and the celebration of that song. And I want that song to be played at my wake. It is phenomenal. But she took her thing, and she put it into the song. It's just wonderful. I love her.
Speaking of people we love, you referenced Neil Young a minute ago. I just heard a new version that's going to be coming out of the song Harvest with Rufus Wainwright. And
can't wait to hear that.
It's amazing. But again, I've heard a version of Harvest Moon by Poolside, who are like an electro pop group. It's interesting how his songs, you wouldn't think of them necessarily translating into those other things. But speaking of Neil Young, here's my question. How does one put together a 100-voice choir for Neil Young and record with Neil Young?
Nico Bolas, who's a producer, writer, engineer, writer I've known all my life. He recorded my first demos at Record One. Dear, dear friend. He did Rockin' in the Free World. He did so many things with Neil and the Crosby, Stills, Nash Young and all that stuff. When they were doing the Living with War record, Neil said he wanted 100 singers, and I wanted them all to be able to honestly sing the lyrics I'm doing the song. I don't want them to do the record because it's a gig. And I wanted no overdubbing. I don't want 50 singers. I don't want 25 singers doubling, quadrating up 4 times. I want 100 singers. So it really got 101 Dalmatian. We got 101 people, but it's 100. And so I got this call. I think I was flying from New York to Chicago to L.A. I had a layover, and I get this phone call, and I answer the phone, and it goes, Darrell? And I said, yeah. And I said, this is Neil Young. And of course I was like, the gonads go up inside you a little bit before they drop down, and you kind of say, okay, oh my God, hey Neil, how you doing? Nico said, doing fine. I said, hey Nico, I'm doing this record called Living with War, and Nico said, you're the person to do this, because I loved arranging. I did the Soul Mission record with the choir, all that stuff. So Nico said, you got to get Darrell. Darrell's the only one who could be up there. So he said, hey, I need to get 100 singers, and I want this one I want to do, blah, 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 record live. You and I get together, we'll arrange it all out. You want to do it? I said, sure. And I said, when do you want to do it? I said, maybe like about 4 or 5 weeks from now. I said, okay, great. I said, I'm flying back to L.A. I'll be in L.A., so sometime next week I'll come up to the ranch and we can, go over it. I said, awesome. I land in L.A., 5 hours later, phone call. Hey, Darrell, it's Neil. I said, and it's Sunday night. He goes, hey, we're going to do the record on Wednesday. I need you to get the singers in 4 days. I was like this, what the frig? So, of course, I'm now calling 10 people and said, find me people who are available. And then that's how it happened. And literally the night before, we sat in the studio over at Capitol and went through each song and made notes about what to do. And Neil and I were on our feet for 11 and a half hours with the best singers that have ever been in. There was not a session going on anywhere for backgrounds that day. We had everybody. The Waters, Gilstrap. I could just go through. Yeah. We had everybody in that room. And it was incredible. I learned so much from him. And then I worked on about 3 or 4 other records in different capacities on that stuff with Neil. Yeah. But every time I've learned something from him as a writer and as an artist about being authentic for yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. And that's a gift from Nico to me. So
that's an amazing story. You, as a musical director, you have worked with the Grammy folks.
Yeah, forever.
For a whole lot of things to do, like these incredible songwriter-intensive, historic songwriter events at the Wilshire Ebell, I believe.
Oh, they have the foundational shows,
yeah.
The Music Cares,
those
all that stuff.
Really interesting.
Oh, yeah, it was really great because that was everything has to be, I have to learn and grow from something. I have to kind of be on my toes, for something. I don't know if I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who understand that. I'm not looking just to sit back in my chair and work. I need to be a little scared. And every one of those shows, you're working with somebody new or something different and meeting somebody new from a different ilk of music. And you're on your toes, from Solomon Burke to Ed Sheeran to... I just can't, Fogerty to Jerry Lee Lewis to, it just doesn't stop the amount of people had to work with and arranging, putting together a show. And I got to move from MDing to co-producing with this wonderful producer, a woman from the Grammys called Kelly Darr. And man, we pushed the edges of those things too. It was great.
You did a record called God's Work with LeAnn Rimes. Incredible cast of people on that record.
It's incredible.
Aloe Black among them, Ziggy Marley.
Love them.
On and on and on. I read an interview with LeAnn. She said it was almost like casting a film to find the guests. Is that the way that it works?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing that. That's what I'm saying. That kind of viewpoint of what a record is like a movie for me and for her. I think even more that we keep working together. We keep pushing each other's boundaries a lot. And this record was really, really important to her. Spitfire was like the diary through the divorce and through the finding new love and going through that journey. And then Remnants was kind of like her life had been torn apart, but I'm going to build a kingdom from my remnants. And that became that next turning point for her. And when this God's Work record came out, how do we take this wellness journey that she's had of putting her life back together in like an unbelievable, powerful way? And each song became its own message. So when it came to casting people for that, it's like everything. You cast according to what that scene is, for what that movie is. If that person's Robert De Niro, you try to cast Robert De Niro, not a fake Robert De Niro. You know what I mean? You try to cast for them to bring out the fullness. So when we wrote the Only for the song, which was like this little reggae pop song, the first thing to do is I called Ziggy and said, hey, would you want to be on this record? Actually, first person we called is Ben Harper. I said, hey, when you want to play? He said, yes, I'd love to, man. And then we called Ziggy, and Ziggy joined in. It was awesome. And then having Lettucey join in. And what was the reason for pulling that is taking 4 Grammy winners from four different genres of music to come together when the lyric says, hey, the only way we're going to get there is if we hold each other's hand. It was on purpose taking someone from the R&B world, from the blues world, from the reggae world, and from the country pop crossover world of LeAnn, and putting them all together. So it was to support the lyric of the song.
I love the dance mixes. Dave Audet's dance mixes are incredible.
So Dave's been a really good partner in coming to him because he's one of those people who tries to constantly push the boundaries himself. So he's a great partner that way. And LeAnn just loves working with him because she can say, I'm looking for this to be this type of mix. I'm looking for the mix to be this. Because a lot of times when you turn something over to a remixer, they just give it back to you and that's it.
Yeah.
You either use it or don't use it. But there he is. Dave's very collaborative that way, which is awesome.
Talk about amazing songs. Love is love is love.
Lindy Robbins, Toby Gad,
yes.
LeAnn and I. Yeah, I've been writing with Lindy for 25 years, maybe 25 years. And Toby, I've always loved what Lindy and him connect together. So that was really great to put those two in with LeAnn and I and go for that song. And that was interesting because the lyric and the end of the song, when we got done writing those 2 days, was there, but then LeAnn pushed it even more political. She did rewrites of what she wanted. She said, we're saying it, but we're not saying it, and I want to say it. So that went through another phase with LeAnn after the songwriters were done. The artist came back before I sing it. That I feel like I'm hiding what I'm saying as if I want someone to cut the song. I'm not looking for someone to cut the song. I'm cutting it. So that's what LeAnn said. So
it's great. It's great. She's such an interesting artist in that we feel like we've known her for such a long time, and she survived what is so difficult for so many artists to survive, which is success at that kind of an age.
And being alive still.
Being alive still, yeah. So it's great. It's great to hear. And she's such an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community.
Love her.
And that song also, as is Lindy. Lindy's been our guest here on Storyophonic. We love her as well too. So all of that is great stuff.
LeAnn, her journey, it's quite an amazing journey. It's 27 years, 28 if you count her first indie record she cut of recording. Her growth, and I always kind of say when I go with all the things that we do with LeAnn, people know LeAnn where they first met her. They met her at Blue, that's what they think. If they met her at How Do I Live, that's what they think. If they met her at Coyote Ugly, that's what they met. If they met her at Probably Wouldn't Be This Way, well, there's a whole new slant of people right now who know her because from Love Is Love to Spaceship right now. And then you go to the UK, you go to Australia, you go to Japan, you go to Brazil, you go to South Africa, you go to Italy, you go to Germany, and she's huge. And so it's interesting. And out here in America, it's like, well, it's either coastal or country world or the pop world or celebrity world. it just keeps evolving. It's like it's all these different factions of people and fans, and I find it amazing that she knows how to go from one world to the next world to give things for those people all to share her life experience with as a songwriter and as a singer. And she's one of the best singers I've ever worked with in my life. If I brought her into the room with you and you just heard that, just simple in the room, you go, no friggin' way. And I've worked with some of the best friggin' singers ever. I mean, really singers who nuancely know their voice and know how to sing, not scream, not yell. I mean, just, it's frightening. I mean, she's one of my most favorite muses to work with my entire life. I mean, I think, what do we create next, so.
That's terrific. And speaking of what do we create next, I know you've got a lot of things in the fire that you are working on at any given time.
Hey, I'm ADD, of course.
That's great. That's great. Darrell Brown, you have so much to say and to share, and it's so valuable to hear your story and your philosophy and the way that you came up. And
I hope I feel like, I hope I shared enough. I keep thinking there's more to tell. I don't know.
There always is.
There is.
But that's why you're a songwriter. And we appreciate you being our guest today on
Thank you.
Storyophonic.
Thank you for letting me be here in Storyophonic. It's awesome being with you and sitting and talk, okay?
Thank you for listening to Storyophonic. Please follow us and rate us on your favorite listening platforms, tune in for new shows, and check out past episodes. Storyophonic is produced and mixed by Lindsay Tomasic. Our production director is Kim Strand. Our theme music is by Dadalite Mine. And I'm your host, Dan Kimpel.